Hello, welcome back. It's a pleasure to have you there following us live on the stream of Outlook 2023, the Clean Energy Forum. And we had a very interesting debate on the economics of the transition in our first panel after an initial speech from the Vice President of the Municipality of Oeiras here. Now we're going to move on to speak about green hydrogen as we continue to focus on clean energy and renewable energy. And there's no question potential for green hydrogen to increase its production and its impact in Europe. Today it accounts for less than 2% of Europe's present energy consumption, and it is primarily utilized to produce chemical products such as plastics and fertilizers. But REPower EU's plan is an ambitious one to produce 10 million tons and import another 10 million tons of renewable hydrogen in the European Union by 2030, a giant leap from the 5.6 million tons predicted in 2021. There is definitely a new dynamic to H2 in Europe, and to discuss this source of energy and also to talk about what is happening in Europe and in Portugal, I'm delighted to welcome my three next guests. I'll start with Sergio Machado, Head of Hydrogen at Galp, Duarte Lins de Faria, Member of the Board of the Ports of Sines and the Algarve, and we also have Miquel Lassa, Iberia CEO of EIT, InnoEnergy, and EGHAC. All right, gentlemen, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I've had an opportunity to conduct various interviews regarding renewable energy over the last months, and green hydrogen is front and center. First of all, maybe I'll start with Sergio, because I want to find out in broad terms, to kind of set the stage, what is so special about green hydrogen and what should people know now from an introductory standpoint?
Yeah, thank you. We start by the fact that 70% of our emissions today are related to energy. So if we're going to fight climate change, if we're going to avoid this, we really need to start by that. And the reality, let's make it very clear, energy transition is mostly about electrification. We need to electrify everything that we can. And to electrify because we're going to use renewables in that electricity. But the reality is also that there's big sectors in our economies that cannot be electrified just like that, where the use of electricity will not be possible or efficient. And we have, on those, we can use green hydrogen for uses like in transports, for heavy duty, long haul, for maritime, for aviation that will not be able to electrify, for in industry, to replace the hydrogen that we use today, gray hydrogen with green hydrogen, but also for high grade heat, where we'll not be able to use electricity to reach those kinds of high temperatures. And also for buildings, for climatization of buildings, where in some cases hydrogen will be an efficient vector. And that was the general framework that we had, was around energy transition. I think that from the 24th of February, one other thing very important happened, of course, which is putting hydrogen also in a way to guarantees security of supply and diversification of our sources of energy. And that's why we got, after that, REPower EU almost multiplying by 3 the target for green hydrogen in Europe. And you've mentioned from about 7 million tons per year to 20 million tons per year of green hydrogen by 2030. But for that to happen, for that to be possible, a lot has to happen yet.
And we'll get into what needs to happen, because when you talk about the transition and the acceleration in transition, Miquel, you're very much at the center of that, right? Because you have an acceleration center. So I wanted to ask you about the InnoEnergy European Green Hydrogen Acceleration Center, what it's doing on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to this event. Well, let me start maybe by saying some words about InnoEnergy, so that people understand also the general framework and why we do and what we do. Well, just for you to know, InnoEnergy is a private company that was created back in 2010 as a result of a private and public partnership with the European Commission, with the mission to accelerate energy transition through innovation and entrepreneurship. Okay, so we have been investing from back 2011 to today in around 500 early stage startups in the field of energy transition. 300 of them are going strong. And in that framework, back in 2017, we received the mandate from the Commission to lead the so-called European Battery Alliance, which is an industrial value chain initiative that was aiming to bring to Europe, or to create in Europe, a market that did not exist, which was the market of batteries and electric vehicles. Building upon the success of that initiative, we also decided to replicate that model in other industrial value chains that we deem are very relevant and strategic for Europe. One of them is the photovoltaics. I think somebody mentioned before in the panel before that we are importing most of the panels from China, and we want to change that. And the third one is hydrogen, green hydrogen. So in green hydrogen, we decided to take the very same industrial value chain approach, in this case with the support of Breakthrough Energies. And what we are doing basically is to try to accelerate industrial projects that are related to the hard-to-abate industries that Sergio mentioned before. We are providing basically acceleration services that are multidimensional, but basically aim to connect those industrial projects with off-takers that enable the bankability of the projects as soon as possible. And in those projects, we are taking a full value chain approach. Maybe I will speak later a little bit more on that.
Sure.
And we are trying also to mobilize a full European ecosystem where we have like 500 industries in our ecosystem, industries like, for example, companies like Alp and other type of companies in the value chain, to make that possible and to make this as successful and as fast as possible.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get into some of those ideas a little bit later in our conversation. Duarte, it's clear. There's no question that the port of Sines, and sometimes it's Portuguese, I don't know, Port of Sines, but Port Sines, there's no question it's very much at the center of the energy transition in Portugal. I think it's difficult to talk about this subject without bringing up the work that you're doing. But to those who are not as aware of what is happening and what has happened over the last few years, tell us the role of the port of Sines in the energy transition in Portugal.
Thank you very much. A special salute to the members of the panel and the organizers of this summit. Pedro, I think that the first way is to explain to everybody why do you need a port as a port of Sines to deliver the renewables in the future. This is very important because we are talking almost all the times in lands, in pipelines, and so on.
Yeah.
But for us, it's very important to have our ports together in a connection with the center and the north of Europe. Why? Because we have in first hand, we have ships, we have LNG ships and ships that are able for carrying liquefied gases for exporting not hydrogen itself, but hydrogen as a carrier, using a carrier. For example, ammonia, for example, other kinds of carriers that we can join, and then liquefy this product and export. Export why? Because at this time we have some ports, for example, Amsterdam and especially Rotterdam, that are able now to have a special role in the future for a hub for distribution this hydrogen for the center of Europe. And this is very important. It is the starting point that we have to make. Second point, we have in Sines, fortunately, a very wide area that is a logistic and industrial zones that is manned by ICEP. That is very important to be together with the plants of the port. Why? Because most of the plants, most of the factories that can settle over there, they can produce the hydrogen by the means that you want. For example, by solar, by wave and by wind. And in that point, you can have an electrolyzer for doing it and a storage, because it's very important to things in a port or in a way that you have a hub. First, have water. Second, have energy. Third, you have the ability to have the storage, and in this case for renewables, I'm talking about storage, the hydrogen. That's the starting. My colleague said something in Foster this way. We have started with the hydrogen, and the way for storing can be in different ways. At last, this is very important, and I'm not talking so much of it, but it's very, very important, the interconnections. In the future, we have two hands. One hand is by sea, another hand is by land. But we have to have interconnections in all the ways, electrical and others, to support the center of Europe coming from the Iberian Peninsula. That's the way why you need a port, and in my case, the port of Sines.
I really want to go. I've never been. Mikel, have you been?
No, but
Okay.
I've heard many times talk about Sines, and I was talking to him
Yeah.
precisely. I mean, it's the epicenter of green hydrogen in Europe, I would say.
It really is, and you know, I think, and I was speaking with Duarte before we started this conversation. He's lived abroad for many years. I've lived abroad for many years, and when we come back and we see the potential that Portugal sometimes has to be a game changer in this clean energy transition, and when you speak about hydrogen. Maybe a question, I'll get to Mikel in a moment, but maybe a question for Sergio and Duarte regarding Portugal and the role it can play. Is it possible to be as ambitious as Duarte was saying regarding not only the port of Sines as well, but what can be built out from there?
Yeah, I think so. Sines is a great location for green hydrogen. And we are, I would say, Galp is really at the epicenter of this, because it is in Sines that we have the refinery. Mm-hmm. The refinery is it's the largest producer and user of hydrogen nowadays. And this is not only in Portugal. Actually, refining is the largest use of hydrogen worldwide, just followed by the fertilizer value chain. And what we're going to do in Sines is replace the gray hydrogen that we have with green hydrogen. Okay, and we are in a really good position because we have access to the most competitive renewable energies in Europe, both solar and wind. But we need to have that access. It's one thing that needs to be clear here, and I think it's an important point. So to make this gray to green in the refinery, what we'll need is about 600, 700 megawatts of electrolyzers. For that, we'll need a lot more megawatts of renewable power. And this is hundreds, up to 1,000 hectares of solar and solar farms and a lot of wind farms. And we cannot have that concentrated in one place. We will not be able to have all that around Sines. It would be too much of an impact. Of course, it wouldn't be acceptable. So we need electrical grids to bring that renewable energy from Portugal, from Iberia to Sines. This is absolutely key. So these interconnections are key. The electrical one, it's really important. And then, of course, we need to guarantee the principles that are being called on every green hydrogen discussion. We need to make sure that these renewables are additional, so that this is new capacity that we are bringing to it. We are not cannibalizing renewables that are already in the market. Yeah. We need to guarantee some kind of synchronism, but we cannot be too stringent on these rules. Otherwise, we'll only delay the deployment of green hydrogen, we'll increase costs, and we'll lose this tremendous opportunity that we have, in Sines and in Portugal, and I would say in Iberia in general.
How much investment is happening as we speak now for that transition?
Let me say,
where is it coming from?
Especially when I'm talking about the most strong, I talk about Madocua, and I'm talking about this is a Power 2X investment that is is deal with a factory for producing ammonia. And in this case, I'm talking about 1 billion, okay? 1 billion in UK or United States with in numbers. This is the first way. The second that is very important is to be together with Madocqua is also a Copenhagen investments partners that is almost not only together with a special cluster, but is more European one. And there is another point that is very important. The Port of Sines is together being in a consortium together with the Port of Rotterdam, and together with some big companies as Vopak, Shell, Engie, and so on, in order to have a green corridor of hydrogen in near future. And the idea is the same: to have a plant, to have the electrolyzer, and then to have a storage and the ability for export with a ship in liquid natural gas, the liquid gas, whatever. In this case, ammonia, because nowadays with the technology that we have now, it's too difficult to carry the hydrogen in liquid state in an open way, because it's too difficult, because the liquid hydrogen, you can only afford the liquid temperature in about 250 degrees Celsius. That means that only a small part from the absolute zero. So it's too difficult for carry directly the hydrogen. So this is the basic investment. But I can add Antonio a little bit, because we have an idea, not in our jurisdiction area, but in front of us, about 12 miles, floating wind platforms that in the future, this is not our jurisdiction and the responsibility direct of the Portuguese state, in order to have farms just over there for producing at, in the future, about 2 gigawatts a year. So there is another way for adding the wind that you need, but not at land, but by the platforms. We have a pilot, let me say, the Portuguese state, as a pilot near Viana do Castelo, that are working very well, and the idea is having more floating platforms in order to produce not only energy by solar. That is a problem because the area is very big, but also to profit the wind, and let me say, the tide and the waves that you can join together in a platform like that.
You're a great promoter.
I'm not. I'm telling about what I'm feeling.
Yeah, but I can see the best promoters are the ones who are passionate about what they're saying. Mikel, one question, 2 parts. Give us concrete examples of some of the companies that you've helped accelerate and the impact that they're making or that they can make, and then talk to us a little bit about, and then the others can get into this conversation as well, but the importance of the technology, how important technology is and advances in technology, and feeding and accelerating that technology to allow the transition to be efficient.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, regarding the first part of the question, let me say I mean, you all know, I think, that now, you know, green hydrogen related projects have a premium. Everybody's talking about the price of hydrogen, whether it is 3, it is 5, it is 7 euros per kilo or whatever. We are taking a little bit different approach in the projects that we are supporting, and I think we are supporting we are being involved in one of the biggest projects that are being launched in Europe. And what we are trying to do is to have a full value chain approach. And when I talk about value chain, we are not stopping at hydrogen, but we are going further downstream in the process. We are talking about projects that are producing, for example, green steel or are producing green fertilizers. And what we typically do is involve all the players in the value chain as investors in that project. Why? Because we want to share the risks, we want to share the benefits, and we want to be transparent with them about the margins and the real price and the real cost of the final product. So when people ask, if you ask me what is the price or what is the cost of the green hydrogen in our projects, my answer is, I don't know. And honestly, I don't care, because what I do care is the price or the premium about the final product. I think Duarte was talking about ammonia and other kind of products. Just to give you an example, we have some projects. One of the projects where we are investing is H2 Green Steel in the north of Sweden. And this company is already raising substantial amount of funds to make the first plant viable, and this first plant will be producing 3.5 million tons of green iron in Sweden in 2026. And I know in that particular case, the green steel that is produced per ton is 200 euros more expensive than conventional steel. It's 20% more expensive. But what we did in that project is involve from the very beginning companies that are interested in decarbonizing their final products. Give you an example. Automotive companies like Mercedes or Scania for trucks, they are interested in beyond decarbonizing their drivetrain, sell to their customers a product that is fully decarbonized. And when they do the analysis and they say, okay, for my Mercedes car, which is 30,000, 40,000 euros at least, 200 euros more for the car is something that my customer is willing to pay. And we are doing the same with, for example, with fertilizers. We have another project that we hopefully will announce beginning of 2023. We are involving also food companies. We are involving food companies that are at the end of the value chain, that they want to reduce their scope 3 emissions. And for them, it's very important to say, okay, I'm producing my beer, my biscuits or whatever in a fully decarbonized manner. When they do their analysis, the premium of that cost increase because of green hydrogen is really small. In some cases it's 2-3%, and they are, by doing that, they are decarbonizing maybe 20% of the emissions related to that product. And that is the approach that we are trying to take. You were speaking about technology.
Technology, yeah.
Of course, technology is very important. I mean, in these early stage projects, we are taking this approach, and maybe we are addressing premium markets. For the future, of course, we expect, with all the investment and all those first industrial cases, that technology will evolve significantly and costs will be reduced, and that this approach that now works for premium products would be also available for all type of products, and we will reach our objective of net zero in Europe by 2050. That is a little bit the approach.
I have a final question for all of you, and I'm going to come in here as a consumer. Okay, when I think about the mass transport and the carbon footprint that it has, whether that's aviation or maritime transport as well, and the opportunity that's there to clean the way in which obviously energy is produced for those methods of transport. I get a little bit concerned or worried, like how does the transition works, how does the technology work? What message do you have regarding, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong as well, Sergio, that recently TAP did the first flight with green hydrogen, correct?
No, with sustainable aviation fuels.
Okay, thank you.
Which is, so...
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. But the question, and you can start, is when this transition happens, how important is it to inform the consumer that everything is fine, and that the kind of awareness in one way, but then gaining the market confidence to make these changes?
I think, yeah, sure. So these changes are coming both from both sides. Many of these changes are coming from regulation.
Okay.
So you have regulation coming, which is setting some mandates, some targets, some minimum amounts of clean energy that you need to put in these sectors, like transportation. Now, what you have now in Europe, it's Renewable Energy Directive 2, RED 2, called RED 2, which already puts you mandatory targets of renewable energy that you need to bring to your mobility energy. And this is what is being discussed in Europe now, which is the revision of this RED 2, some call it RED 3, that is bringing these targets higher. and introducing some special mandates, not only for general renewable energy, but some types of energy like green hydrogen. But you also have what Michael was telling us now, and the example of what we did recently with TAP, which is volunteer movements from companies. And you have that, you were mentioning about Mercedes, but there's a lot of other companies that are demanding that their value chain is decarbonized. So, and also touching on what Duarte was saying is, so I think it's good that we connect and Sines and the Iberia on this hydrogen move to the rest of the world, and we create the opportunity to explore the potential of Iberia and export green hydrogen and green hydrogen derivatives. But I think that we also have a great opportunity in Iberia, which is using this very competitive green hydrogen. I think that in Iberia we have all the conditions to have the most competitive green hydrogen in Europe.
Okay, that's a bold statement.
It is, but it is. I'm perfectly convinced of that, and that comes from the fact that we have mostly the cheapest solar energy in Europe. So we must take advantage of that. But to use that, like many other countries have used that in the first industrial revolution, and then the other second, and which is using the cheapest form of energy, of the energy that we need to use now, this energy for the energy transition, to make our products. So I like projects, and I know that Michael is involved in some of these. We have been approached, and we are working actively on these, which is there are companies that are willing and wanting to decarbonize their process, and they're coming to us to asking us how can we help them on that. And what we are saying is come and bring your plans to co-locate with us, and we'll deliver to you the green hydrogen that you need for this transition.
Okay. Finally, Duarte and Miquel, what is your message regarding the market confidence and regarding this change of energy that a lot of people may not know that much about?
I think that we have to be focused in two ideas. First of all, in my idea in the ports, we are trying for a new strategic plan to have 3 Ds. What we mean with the 3 Ds? Decarbonize, digitalize, and diversify the markets. And I add something, markets with confidence, that they are reliable, especially when you are talking, for example, from energy, from raw material, and so on. These are the 3 things that we have to look forward. And the second point that is very important, I have listened carefully my colleagues, but in maritime transport is my experience, and I can say that we have some taxes that we have to apply to some fuels that are the fuels that are fossil and so on. And now the Commission has committed to have a plan, to have a road map, to having different situations for the next years. That means that each ship will pay depending on the amount of the fossil fuels, or it means for the renewables that is going to blend with the actual fuel. And for us, for example, in maritime transport, the problem is not the kind of machinery that you have just over there. Is the ability for each port as the capacity for supplying the right fuel in the right time from each ship. And it depends on the changing of the fuel of each ship. This will be now in force in European Union, and we are looking forward for, the reason is the maritime transport is international. You have to agree in International Maritime Organization, that is IMO. The center of IMO is in London, and IMO is also responsible to have a compatible system on the fees for the transition in the future. And it means, is my experience in maritime transport and for shipping. And also having each ship what we call on power supply, that onshore power supply. That means that each ship, especially the cruisers, when arrive to a big city, to have the ability to connecting by electrical and stopping all the generators.
Gotcha.
Because this is a problem with emissions that you have in the big cities. These are the experience that I have and I add to my colleagues.
Final quick word from you, Mikael.
I have to apologize, Pedro, because I didn't hear your question properly. So
Oh,
if you
no,
can repeat.
just what message do you have for the market during this transition to make sure that people are confident that it can happen and they feel safe while it's happening as consumers as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the consumers we do have, an issue. I mean, it's not new. It's not from this year or last year. We have been trying to also work in that respect, because at the end, in some markets, the consumers play a very relevant role, and they are the ones that should be demanding this kind of product. Of course, progress has been done, but it's difficult, and I think unfortunately the war with Ukraine and it's helping to pass that message and to make people more aware that. I mean, one, security of supply, which was always mentioned in the trilemma, was relevant, but was somehow forgotten because we were never suffering the consequences of that. But also sustainability is extremely important. And for me, there's a third message that has been somehow connected here. I would say, especially for Iberian politicians, for Iberian people, my message would be: is we have really a great opportunity to bring industry to Portugal, to Spain, because this is, I mean, we have all the ingredients to have a real renewable energy hub, and not only produce energy, but also bring industry that requires cheap and sustainable energy. So for me, that would be the message. So let's work really on accelerating permitting and working to bring these industries and bring these talents to Spain and Portugal to make that a reality and reinforce our economy.
You've convinced me.
And
and we have to talk to Duarte to go and visit the Port of Sines at some time.
My dear colleagues, to say that let's go in practical what we are doing there. And I think that both you and everybody knows that can share and can foster what we are going together.
Yeah.
And especially with my friend of Galp, because the old times that we spent, and we are fostered together, because the Port of Sines is not alone, it's international too.
Yeah. Mikael, Sergio, Duarte, it was a pleasure to have this discussion with you. From green hydrogen, we're going to shift gears and talk about solar in just a couple of minutes, so stay right there. Literally going to be 2 minutes to switch over the panel, and then we'll be back. See you in 2 minutes.